don't think that those are absolutely, that's absolutely nothing that we coach or teach. So that would fall into the category of doing dumb shit that hurts the team, right there in bold letters.
So yesterday was officially week 1 of the 2021 NFL season, and well, there were a lot of things that we learned, and initially I wanted to sandwich everything into one video, but that one video became like 45 minutes long, and I decided just to go by each and every topic with their own special unique video. That way, if you happen to be a fan of a specific team that you want to see analysis on, you can just click on that video. Now, before we get to the content, just do me a favor and sack the like button for the YouTube algorithm. Consider subscribing and turning on our notifications, because we bring you daily NFL news, analysis, and documentaries. And of course, check your boy out on Instagram and Twitter, because we do giveaways on those pages. Now that we got all that out of the way, break! Mic check 1 2 1 2. What's going on, everybody? So the first game I really tuned into yesterday was the Arizona Cardinals going up against the Tennessee Titans, and this was a game I was really excited about, because typically when two really hyped up teams that finished really well in the previous season face off against each other, typically it turns out to be very competitive, especially in the case of the Arizona Cardinals. You see, a lot of people made fun of the Arizona Cardinals during the offseason, mainly because apparently this team is officially in old age retirement home after signing two standouts from the 2011 NFL draft class in JJ Watt, which was a big deal in my opinion, and a very underrated signing, even though JJ Watt kind of took his time in selecting his team and ultimately selected a team that I really didn't expect him to choose in the Arizona Cardinals. But in addition to that, a more under the radar signing that they had was AJ Green. And honestly, both of these players made their presence felt, although it wasn't necessarily the way that they typically would make their presence felt. I mean, in AJ Green's situation, you're talking about a wide receiver that was literally selected right before Julio Jones, and it wasn't the wrong pick at all, because this is also a guy that had 6 1,000-yard receiving seasons for the Cincinnati Bengals. In my opinion, no doubt a Hall of Famer in the future, but the thing about him was, up until 2018, ironically, right after he got into that little fight with Jalen Ramsey, that's when things started to go downward for him, because of course he sustained an injury in 2018. He missed all of 2019. By the time he came back in 2020, the team he once knew was completely different with the Cincinnati Bengals. Out was Andy Dalton and Marvin Lewis, in was Zach Taylor and Joe Burrow. And well, even though AJ Green wanted to move on during the 2020 season, the Cincinnati Bengals opted to keep him there, despite having Tyler Boyd and drafting T. Higgins as well. And subsequently, he only got targeted 104 times for 523 yards and 2 touchdowns, a very far contrast from the player that he once was. As a result, he didn't really get paid very much to go to Arizona, but the thing is, he made his presence felt. He was still targeted 6 times yesterday. He did only have 2 receptions for 25 yards. Not bad for a wide receiver 2 or potentially a wide receiver 3, depending on if you're rating him above or below Christian Kirk. And honestly, I know this is going to be very underrated as well, but I feel the same exact way for JJ Watt, another player that's 32 years old, part of the 2011 NFL draft class, had 2 combined tackles, 2 solo tackles, 1 tackle for a loss, and 1 QB hit. And the reason I'm saying that his presence was felt and AJ Green's presence was felt is you have to account for both of these players. And JJ Watt going out there and just being on the opposite edge of Chandler Jones resulted in Chandler Jones, and I'm not saying this is the only reason, because of course Chandler Jones was going up against Taylor Lewan. Taylor Lewan is one of the better left tackles in the entire NFL, and he absolutely spanked the guy. And this isn't to say that the Tennessee Titans played incompetent football, because I watched the game twice. I had it playing originally in front of me because I drafted Kyler Murray in fantasy, but in addition to that, I went back and watched the highlights just to make sure I didn't miss anything. And when I was watching the game, there was no point where I thought this is an incompetent team. Yes, I know Mike Vrabel came out and said that Julio Jones really messed up.
I don't think that those are absolutely, that's absolutely nothing that we coach or teach. So that would fall into the category of doing dumb shit that hurts the team, right there in bold letters.
Of course, you have Mike Vrabel coming in and saying that Julio Jones messed up, but other than that, I don't think this was a team that played fairly incompetent football. I feel like this is a team that just simply got out-muscled and absolutely destroyed by a fairly underrated defense and a remarkable, absolutely terrifying offense. I mean, I think this is the first year that I looked at the Cliff Kingsbury offense and said, wow, he might be onto something here. The combination of Kyler Murray and DeAndre Hopkins and the underrated rushing attack of Chase Edmonds and James Conner that combined for over 100 yards rushing. Obviously, Chase Edmonds had a much better day than James Conner did, but then you have Kyler Murray, who had 4 touchdowns, 1 interception thrown, and of course he had 1 scrambling touchdown as well. And then you go to the defensive side of the ball, a team that's captained by the likes of JJ Watt, Chandler Jones, Isaiah Simmons was making some plays there as well. And honestly, I think you have a team that could potentially make a run, a very deep run in the playoffs, possibly a NFC championship contender, or a team that should make noise or be very difficult to beat in the NFC playoff picture. Now, of course, this is just 1 week, but I'm just going based off of what I saw, and this isn't a team that has a porous defense. This is a team that has a defense that could absolutely shock some people. And if you even look at what Taylor Lewan said about Chandler Jones and his 5 sacks today, then I'm sure you could understand where I'm coming from. I mean, imagine getting spanked so badly that the player that you spanked came out and said that I got my ass kicked today. No way around that. I let the team and the fans down. Thank you, Chandler Jones, for exposing me. It will only force me to get better. I've never seen something like this before. Usually football is a game where people talk a lot of trash to each other, but I've never seen something like this before. I mean, where a player is so dominant that the 3-time Pro Bowl left tackle that he destroyed came out and thanked him for exposing him. So this is a pretty big game for the Arizona Cardinals and a remarkable way to debut this season. Kyler Murray checked off all the boxes and looked like a stud at the quarterback position. Chandler Jones, who was, in my opinion, a little bit of a distraction in the offseason when he came out and said that he wanted a brand new contract. Bear in mind, it's very uncomfortable to pay a player that is 31 years old and give him a contract extension, especially considering the fact that Chandler Jones didn't really have the best statistics last year. I mean, this is a guy that literally had 1 sack in 5 games last year, and the year prior, he was absolutely dominant with 19 sacks, and the year before that, 13, and the year before that, 17. But he's starting off this season in a season that could potentially be one of his best seasons ever, and I think the player that is complementing him on the opposite edge, JJ Watt, is definitely going to be a huge contributor in him pulling together one of the best seasons of his career. So honestly, I'm very impressed by the Arizona Cardinals, and I'm really excited about that entire division in general. I mean, if you look at this division, all 4 teams in the NFC West won their first game. The LA Rams, the San Francisco 49ers, the Arizona Cardinals, and the Seattle Seahawks. And honestly, it's really hard to picture one of these teams not making it to the playoffs because all of them did it in such a dominating fashion, except for the 49ers. They kind of almost lost to the Detroit Lions, but in the Seahawks case, they won 28-16. The Cardinals won 38-13. The Rams won. We're going to make a separate video on the Rams because I could go on and on about that team. So honestly, it should be very exciting for the NFC West. And honestly, I think it's in the Cardinals' best interest to potentially extend Chandler Jones for 3 more years at the very minimum. Let me know in the comment section down below what you guys think about this. Do you think the Arizona Cardinals had a fluke, or do you think that they're the real deal? Do you think Chandler Jones should get tested for some type of substance, or do you think he's coming out with an edge? Do you think something's changed for him to be this dominant? I'd like to hear what you have to say. Aside from that, I'm your boy Mike, and I'm dropping our mic until our next upload.